So the lawyers are saying, oh, the fight for Shamima is not over. I've got a few questions on this. Firstly, do we know who is actually paying for her legal fight?
As far as I'm aware, and I don't know the definitive answer, but as far as I'm aware, from my friends who are the Chamber's acting for her, it's being funded by legal aid as far as I'm aware, but don't quote me on that.
No, that's fine. So, hypothetically, if it is legal aid, then the British taxpayer potentially is paying for Shamima Begum's legal aid.
If it is, yes.
If it is, yes. Well, that's interesting to kick us off with. Moving forward, what now? What could the legal process for Shamima be?
Well, look, she had 9 grounds of appeal, 7 were technical. I just read the judgment this morning, the summary of the judgment. There's a much bigger full judgment, which I'll read in due course. But the 2 grounds she had was, first, that the Secretary of State failed to take into account relevant considerations, namely that she'd been trafficked. And the second ground was that it was a breach of Article 4, which is a prohibition of forced labour and slavery. Now, the courts, I have to correct you on something, Patrick. You said the courts considered whether she'd been trafficked. The courts didn't consider that. What the court considered was, should the Secretary of State have taken that into account?
Yes, okay.
And so the court fell in the favour of the government, and what they've essentially said that, no, they didn't have to. He didn't have to take into account that she'd been trafficked. And the overriding, I think, what was most important for the Secretary of State was the fact that she went voluntarily to Syria, and that was a major factor. To ISIS. That was a major factor in the decision. And what the courts are saying, that it's okay for a child to be trapped. Well, it's okay for the Secretary of State to deprive someone of their citizenship, where a child's been trafficked to another country. And we can then strip them, effectively put them into exile, is what's happened.
Yes. No, look, thank you for that nuance, actually, because you are absolutely right. There says that there was a credible suspicion that Begum was trafficked for sexual exploitation, etc., and that was in relation, obviously, to the decision that, or the weight that the Home Secretary did decide to give to that when it came to making their decision. So, yes, important clarification there, and well made. But how long could this drag on for now? Shamima Begum is in some kind of camp somewhere. Could she just remain there indefinitely now, or what's the process that's going to take place? Am I still going to be sitting here in 2 years' time talking about this?
Well, many other countries, as you know, Patrick, have repatriated their citizens and then either prosecuted them or kept them under surveillance. But there is an appeal process. From SIAC, it goes to the Court of Appeal. And so her team will have 21 days in which to appeal this. Now, I'm not sure whether the court granted permission to appeal. I've got to read the full judgment to read that part. But even if they didn't, they can still do that. They can still appeal to the Court of Appeal.
Yeah, now one of the things I'm quite keen to pick up on is the fact that people initially were saying, well, look, she was a child, and they were saying, well, she's a British citizen and she should face justice over here. And then she was trafficked, etc. And now that these things potentially have just been dampened somewhat, I suspect one of the big things that they're going to go off, the people who are desperate to have Shamima Begum back in this country, is, well, look at all the other countries, look at what they're doing, and Britain is now an outlier by not allowing Shamima Begum back. Just explain to me the international state of play. I believe that Spain recently has allowed a wave of returning ISIS people back. But although my understanding is that a lot of them are children, which would indicate they were born over there under the caliphate. But just talk to me about how exceptional Britain is globally in terms of not allowing Shamima Begum back at this stage.
It is an exception. And what you're going to have, Britain, what we don't want is a Guantanamo Bay situation where we're acting as keeping people, undesirable people that we say undesirable, in a foreign country. But the difference is that we've actually stripped her of her citizenship, whereas the other countries haven't, and there's a big distinction there. So I think what's interesting is she didn't give evidence, and that was quite interesting from her legal team, that she could have potentially given evidence via internet, by Zoom or Teams or whatever, but she didn't. And that's quite interesting.
OK, all right. OK, well, interesting in the sense that they obviously didn't want her to do it, which implies that there's a reason behind that, is what you get to quickly.
Well, I think the court was saying that it was difficult to arrange an internet in from Syria, but I find that difficult to believe.